Well, once again, it is time for movie reviews here on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I am delighted to welcome once again Andy Godfrey from Sorted Magazine. Hello, Andy.
Hey Nathan, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
You and I just said to you off air, it doesn't feel like a week since we recorded our tribute to Steve, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Where is that week gone? So
Yeah,
we know that the date for Steve's memorial service has been set now, and we're just continuing to pray for Becca and the family. But
yeah.
great to be on. Thank you. Any excuse to talk about movies, you know me, I'll rattle away.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear about movies, and I understand there has been one or two new releases, and there are some upcoming.
Yeah, we've got a whole host of films coming out this week. I mean, I think that there are at least six new movies
Wow.
coming out this week in cinemas, which I haven't seen. Actually, I've only seen one of them. I'm actually getting to see some of them tomorrow, so a bit too late, unfortunately, for this segment. But I mean, I have seen one of them, which we'll talk about. But it's really interesting. Suddenly, we've got a deluge. I mean, it's been pouring with rain here all
Yeah.
week, and we've now got a deluge of new movies. And that's really, really exciting. I mean, they've obviously been held back. I said to you before, movie companies tend to hold films back, well, when other big films come out, because they know they're not going to be able to compete with the competition. So these are not perhaps the biggest films in the world in that sense, but they are good films. They're looking really good. In fact, one of them is by one of the world's greatest directors, so we'll talk about that as well.
Interesting.
So, the one I have seen, which is showing in cinemas as from today, is a film called Lyvia's House, and this is a thriller. It is about a young journalist who gets married, and she goes back with her husband to live in his childhood home, which is sort of in the middle of nowhere, little Hickville town in America, kind of middle of nowhere. And she discovers that in this town, in fact, in this house, 20 years ago, some murders took place, and she starts investigating them. It was the murder of a, and the murders were linked to the disappearance of a local artist. And it turns out that there's a family connection with her husband, and that's really all I want to say about the plot, because this is a really good twisty taut thriller. It throws you off track. One minute you think it's going that direction, and then suddenly we're off in another direction, and then suddenly we're off in another direction. It's called Lyvia's House. I thought it was really good. It's a first time director, Nico Volkas. It's a foreign film, but it's in English. But it's really, really good, and really worth seeing. So Lyvia's House, if you like twisty stuff, I love twisty stuff. I love stuff that throws me off balance. I can't. Oh, I didn't see
Yeah.
that coming. And this is really good. Um, Other new films that we've got coming out this week, which I haven't seen, but we'll talk about them next week, because I promise you I would try to get to see all six. Okay. I've set aside some time on Saturday to do this. So we've got a film called Dragonkeeper, which is a new kids animation. So families, I've seen the trailer for all of these, by the way, so I can comment from that point of view. But we got a kids animation about a dragon, a young boy taking care of his pet dragon. Looks quite fun. The trailer certainly made me laugh. We got Megalopolis. Now this is interesting. This is by Francis Ford Coppola. Now Francis Ford Coppola is one of the most famous film directors ever, because he made The Godfather and he made Apocalypse Now. And what he's done, perhaps for the first time in his career, he has decided to make a sort of fantasy science fiction film. And the fantasy science fiction is this: imagine a world where the Roman Empire never fell. Oh, my camera's gone, but don't worry. Imagine a world where the Roman Empire never fell. So today, we would be having gladiatorial matches screened on TV. Okay. We would be watching the gladiators in the Colosseum live on TV. That's the kind of world in which we are living in. That's the world in which this film is set. And it looks really good. It looks really spectacular. And Francis Ford Coppola is known for making films with great big set pieces. I mean, Apocalypse Now is one of the greatest war movies ever made. And he had a scene with dozens of helicopters flying in and bombing a village in Vietnam. And, it was just spectacular. This looks really amazing. This looks really good. So I'm looking forward to that one. We've got a film coming out called Never Let Go, which is a psychological thriller about the end of the world. Now, we all know and believe it pure and sorted. The end of the world will happen when Jesus Christ comes again. And we're looking forward to that. And I'm certainly looking forward to Jesus coming again. However, we have a new film about the end of the world, a psychological thriller. It's about a mum who is uh, living in the woods in a little cabin, and she's trying to keep her kids safe from the evil that has caused the end of the world. So, look out for that one. That might be quite good. And then also, we have a film called The Outrun. Now, this stars, and I can never pronounce her name, Saoirse Rowan, who is a great actress. She's been in some wonderful films over the last few years. This is a film about abduction and about recovery from being abducted. So we know that there's this kind of syndrome where people who get kidnapped sometimes fall in love with their kidnappers or they befriend them. This is that kind of thing. But then she gets released, and it's about how she copes with life after abduction. And it's set in the Orkney Islands, which are, I mean, I've been to the Orkney Islands. They are wild and windy and, beautiful scenery, almost like moonscapes in places. Long story short, which I'll tell you one day, I crashed a car up there into a lock, but never mind. This looks really good as well. So those are the new ones out in cinema. Dragonkeeper for kids, Megalopolis, a science fiction film imagining the Roman Empire never fall, Never Let Go, The Outrun, and Lyvia's House. So it's actually 5 new films coming out, of which I've seen one. And I promise you I would have seen the other 4 by this time next week. Also in cinemas, and this relates really to what we were talking about last week, is a film coming out that our friend Steve Legg loved. Because what I didn't mention last week was that Steve absolutely loved the Jurassic Park movies. Steve was a huge fan of the dinosaur movies. So we had a series of films under the heading of Jurassic Park, based on the novels by Michael Crichton, the novel by Michael Crichton. We then had a series of films called Jurassic World. And the difference was Jurassic Park, obviously, the dinosaurs are on an island, they're in a park, Jurassic World, the dinosaurs have escaped off the island and are now roaming free right across the planet. Now, I remember going to see the first Jurassic World Park, the first Jurassic Park film. I can remember it to this day. I saw it at cinema in Portsmouth and being completely and utterly overwhelmed by it. Because you saw that on the big screen for the first time. You thought you were looking at real animals when you were looking at those dinosaurs. And to see it projected on this big screen and a T-Rex charging down the road and the Velociraptors jumping around all over the place, And Steve loved the Jurassic movies. I was disappointed with the last one, and I rang him up, actually. I remember bringing Steve Legg up and saying, Steve, it's not so good. It's not as good as the others. And he went to see it and he rang me and said, you're absolutely right. So we were starting to get a bit disillusioned with them. But Jurassic Park, the very first one, is back in cinemas this weekend. And they're showing it. Now, I'm not necessarily a big fan of this, but they're showing it in 4DX. So, so what happens in 4DX, you sit in a seat and you've got a footrest you put your foot on, and your seat rocks and your seat revs. And if there's rain on screen, you get wet. There's a thing in the seat in front of you that squirts you with water. And if there's smoke on screen, the cinema fills with smoke. So it's this whole 4DX surround around experiencing. Now, for the first time ever, they are bringing Jurassic Park into that format. Now, I find it a little bit of a distraction because I'm waiting for my seat to rock and I'm waiting for, the next squirt of water or whatever. So I find it a bit of a distraction. But it will be fun. It will definitely be fun. I have a feeling if Steve was still with us, that he would be taking the family to see that. So maybe if you want to pay your own tribute to Steve, go and see Jurassic Park and spare Steve a thought, because I have a feeling he would definitely be going to see that. We've got a couple of new films available to watch at home this weekend, and I'm just looking. So 2 I want to highlight in particular because they are 2 of my favourite films of the year. So we've got a film called The Bikeriders. This is now available to watch at home. Back in the late 60s, a photographer in America joined a motorcycle gang. And these necessarily weren't the worst people in the world. Some of them were not nice people. There was drugs going on and all the rest of it. But they were a gang that were riding on these beautiful bikes all around America. And this guy joined them, and he spent 3 years photographing, just photographing. And what they've done is they've taken these photographs and they've turned them into a film. And the film's really, really good. It stars Austin Butler, who played Elvis a couple of years ago in the big film about Elvis Presley. He's really good. So it's based on true stories. It's based on the real lives of real bikers. And it's absolutely fascinating. Judy Cromer, who's a great actress again, is one of the bikers' girlfriends. And she's kind of telling the story. So we get flashbacks. She's being interviewed by this guy who's taking these photographs and is putting this book together. And he said, "Do you remember when?" Oh, yeah, I remember when we arrived at that bar, or I remember when two of them had that fight, or I remember when so-and-so got into... But it's a really fascinating insight into the world of bikers in America in the early 70s. Really enjoyed it. And then from the early 70s, we go to the near future, because also available now to watch at home, and this really is one of my favourite films of the year so far, is a film called Civil War. And it stars Kirsten Dunst, and she plays a war reporter. Civil War is about America in the near future going to civil war. So we know America had a civil war back in the 1800s. We know that. We know Britain had a civil war. Imagine what a civil war would look like in America. Imagine if Florida and Texas and, I don't know, Idaho, any other state decided to join together and say, we're going to rebel. We want to separate from the rest of America, and civil war breaks out in America. What would it look like today? It's got a very Trumpian sort of feel to it. It kind of feels right for the Donald Trump era, And Kirsten Dunst plays a neutral journalist who is traveling the country. So another film about taking photographs. This is why I wanted to link the two, because there's a real link between these two films. She travels the country. She's reporting on the war. Eventually, she's trying to get from New York to Washington because there's rumor that the president has been killed in the White House. And she wants to confirm or deny this rumor and get it out on social media and get the news out to the world. It's a brutal film. There is one scene that absolutely made me jump out of my seat when I saw it because of what happens, because of the sheer brutality. But it is such a good, well-made, well-crafted film. You genuinely believe you're watching real news reports of America at war with itself. And I thought it was great. In fact, I thought it was so good I've ordered the Blu-ray for my collection, because I thought that it was definitely worth having. I've also ordered the Bikeriders for my collection as well. So there you go. Those are the new films that are out today. We can talk about some of them in full next week. Those are the ones to watch at home. And as a tribute to our dear friend Steve Legg, they released, I don't know if they released, obviously they didn't release Jurassic Park just because they knew about Steve. It was coming out anyway. But as a tribute to Steve Legg, Jurassic Park is out there. Steve loved the dinosaurs. He really did. So there you go, Nathan. Those are the films. Let me just say, if any listeners ever see any of these films and they want to contact Pure, I'd love to hear what listeners think about the films.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just email hello at
Yeah.
pure247radio.org. Let us know. We'll pass the questions on to Andy, and maybe you've watched a film and you're thinking, is this any good? You can ask Andy.
Okay. Maybe they disagree with my reviews as well.
Yeah, or let us know your opinions.
Like, Andy did have a question. Is that right?
Yes, we had a question. Now, as you may know, Andy B and Peter often join together on Fridays on the Get Home show, and they talk about all sorts of random things. But a couple of weeks ago, they were actually talking about, I think it was Friday the 30th, so a few weeks ago now. They were talking about a study that showed how people love watching films with their dogs, and so they came up with a question. Basically, if you were to watch a film with a dog, what film would be in the dog's top 8 films?
Well. I mean, there's a film on Sky at the moment called The Black Dog, which is about a cop with his dog. Um, I'm not a dog lover. if something's got fur on it, Nathan, I'm allergic to it. So I would not be watching a film with a dog anyway. I mean, what films that immediately sprang to mind, because you mentioned this to me off air. I think The Secret Life of Pets, of which there have been two, which is an
Yeah.
animated film. These are just off the top of my head. I mean, those are quite fun. Those are about pets having adventures and dogs leading the way. And I mean, right now, all my film friends will be screaming at me any number of films that mention dogs. Um, there was a couple of versions of Stephen King's horror novel Pet Cemetery, um, which are pretty horrific. There was a film called Cats and Dogs some years ago, and I'm just looking up to see if I can see any more dogs in movies. But I think, as I said, I don't know a great deal about dogs because I've never been close to a dog. I've never been close to an animal because I'm allergic to them. And I'm just looking again. There was a film called The Dog's Purpose, which was good. Um, a film called Hatchet, which I think was quite good. The Dog's Journey, which was good. Avoid a film called Strays, it's like the plague. Okay, I will say no more. There's a film called Strays. Avoid it like the plague. Um, Dog's Way Home, and of course Marley and Me,
Yeah.
which is a film about a dog. There have been a couple of Scooby Doo movies as well in the last couple of years, where they've turned Scooby Doo, the old cartoon, into a movie. Marley and Me, happily married couple's life changes after they adopt a dog called Marley, and it's one of those really big dogs. There have been dogs featuring in cop movies. I don't know what else dogs would like, really. You know. But those are some of the films involving dogs. My daughter is screaming at the radio right now because Amy, my daughter, is the world's biggest Disney fan, and she's screaming at me right now. Oliver and Company, Dad, which was a Disney film that came out. I'm trying to think when it came out. It featured Billy Joel on the soundtrack. It came out in 1988. And it was basically Oliver Twist, the story of Oliver Twist, Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist, done with dogs in 20th century New York. But I know Amy will be screaming, "Dad, Oliver's and Company." So those are the ones that I can think of. So Oliver and Company, Marley and Me, Dog's Life, Cats and Dogs. There's four. I know they wanted eight, but there's four off the top of my head.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that I think that answers the question. I hope it answers the question
Well,
for
if
Andy
if it,
B and Peter.
if it doesn't, tell them to get back in touch with me and we'll see
Okay.
what we can do.
Yeah. Well, they had just
If
one
you've got
more.
any questions for next week, let me know.
Yeah. Well, they had one more for slightly small further question, just real
Yeah,
quick. Do you think that certain different breeds might prefer different films?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, if a film features an Alsatian, I guess an Alsatian's going to like it. There's a famous clip, isn't there, on YouTube of a dog watching somebody playing darts, and the guy throws the darts, and the dog runs into the next room to see where the dog lands. So where the dart lands. So we do know that the dogs do interact, and they do sit and watch TV. Steve Legg had a dog. It's unfortunate that we can't ask him for his opinion on this. Steve would be out walking his dog, and one of the great joys was that they were able to take the dog into hospital for
Mm.
Steve to see just before he left us. So Steve would have been a good one to ask this question to. Um, I'm going to go with Oliver and Company. A, because it'll please my daughter, and B, because I think it is a good fun. It's an overlooked Disney classic, which which really should be more widely seen and enjoyed. And it does have a lovely soundtrack by Billy Joel. And of course, and Amy is screaming at me again. She's absolutely screaming at me. How could I not have thought of this straight away? 101 Dalmatians.
Of course.
101 Dalmatians. I mean, I love the Disney classic cartoon. They made a live action version of 101 Dalmatians with Glenn Close playing Cruella de Vil. So you had the cartoon, you got the live action version. They made a prequel called Cruella, which starred Emma Stone a few years ago. That was an interesting Disney film. I never thought I would watch a Disney film that had Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones on the soundtrack, but it does. So, that's not a song we're going to be playing on Pure. But yeah, 101 Dalmatians. There you go. There's and there've been 101 Dalmatians, 102 Dalmatians. There's a live action version. So, both actually, I think. Amy will correct me. So there's another one to add to the list. And again, 101 Dalmatians should. When I was a kid, and again, I'm thinking off the top of my head, Nathan. When I was a kid, there was a film came out which I think you can still find, called Digby, the Biggest Dog in the World. And it was about a sheepdog who a scientist injected with some sort of serum, and it grew and grew and grew, and it became the biggest dog in the world. And that was a family film. I don't think it was Disney. Again, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but certainly Digby, the biggest dog in the world. So sheepdogs would watch Digby, Dalmatians would watch 101 Dalmatians, large, big, cuddly dogs are going to watch Marley and Me, various breeds of dogs are going to watch the Pets, Secret of Pets films, and horror fans are going to watch Pet Cemetery.
Okay. So if dogs are partial to horror, they might want to watch that one.
Yes, and that is quite. Stephen King always said that Pet Cemetery was the most terrific book he ever wrote because it
Okay.
was about dead pets coming back to life in a very vicious way.
Okay. Well, thanks, Andy. I
My
hope that
pleasure.
answers your question, Andy B and Peter, about what films dogs might enjoy. I have seen video actually, I think a couple of videos, dogs watching and obviously interacting with things going on the television. For
Sure.
example, one dog seemed to get scared when he watched Darth Vader coming onto the scene.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, we all get scared when we watch Darth Vader coming on.
Yes.
You know. Yeah. I mean, it may well be that dogs like action movies, that they like things that are fast moving, that they like. I just don't know. I'm not a dog person, Nathan. But if anybody's got any other questions along those lines, why not? Let's have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Andy.
My
Great
pleasure.
movie reviews this week, and thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you again next week.
Look forward to it, my friend. God bless you and God bless Pure.
Rated 5 stars by Sorted Magazine's film critic, Pure 247 takes you behind the scenes of the birth of a global Christian radio station. Andy B will have you laughing and crying as you discover what it takes to create ministry that matters in this inspiring tale of perseverance, honesty, and vulnerability. Buckle up and get ready for a story that's uplifting as it is entertaining. Behind the microphone, they face bankruptcy, eviction, and 2 life-changing surgeries. Can they make it? Will they make it? Get your copy of this life-changing book today. Pure 247 is available now on Amazon. Andy B is best described as a man after God's own heart, who insists that God's vision and resourcing trump all handicaps.